We are joined by Nader Hashimi, Associate Professor of Middle East and Islamic Politics at Georgetown University. Professor Hashimi, you just heard there Mr. Trump skipping Israel on his trip to the region, making deals in Saudi Arabia, lifting sanctions in Syria, and then also offering olive branch to Iran, all without Israeli input. What's your read on Mr. Trump's move? Is this a diplomatic snub, a policy shift, or both?
Well, when it comes to Donald Trump, both domestically and internationally, one has to realize it's always about himself first and foremost, and then his family's business interests, and then those of his friends. He really doesn't have a clear and coherent strategic vision for the world or the United States. It's really what benefits him. So, in his first term in office, he struck up a very warm relationship with the family dictatorship in Saudi Arabia that controls that country. And now that he's back in office, he's trying to cement and develop those ties further, mostly economic. And so when he, on this trip, he didn't just come by himself. He came with a major delegation of all of his senior ministers, but critically, the CEOs of major corporations in the United States, hoping to strike deals that will benefit those corporations, their shareholders, but critically not the working class people of the United States, and certainly not the people of the broader Middle East. So this is a very classic move by Donald Trump. On the question of Israel, I think we have to be careful here and not exaggerate the differences. The United States and Israel basically see eye to eye on most of the major issues. It's not as if tomorrow Donald Trump is going to abandon Israel, sanction Israel, stop Israel from committing its ongoing atrocities in Gaza, veto Israel in any way. The relationship is still very firm, but Donald Trump realizes it doesn't want to, he doesn't want to get dragged into another Middle Eastern war by following Benjamin Netanyahu's advice to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, which would drag the United States into a protracted war. Donald Trump has drawn a red line there, and Benjamin Netanyahu is on the opposite side of that red line.
Professor, Israel and the U.S. may be aligned, but there's also Saudi Arabia, another top ally of the United States, or of Donald Trump, if you like. And these two, Israel and Saudi Arabia, are not aligned on a lot of the region's issues. So what does the choice of Riyadh over Tel Aviv at this point say about Trump's views and approach towards all the problems in the region? I mean, it feels as though he's chosen conciliation over belligerence, at least right now.
Well, I would respectfully push back against the premise of your question that Saudi Arabia and Israel don't see eye to eye on most of the key issues in the region. I think they actually do. There's a difference over Gaza. Saudi Arabia's crown prince, prior to October the 7th, was about to jump into bed with Benjamin Netanyahu in the context of the Abraham Accords. But after that, horrific attack by Hamas and then Israel's genocidal onslaught on Gaza, now approaching, its third year, it's just impossible for any Arab leader or Saudi leader to shake the hands of an Israeli leader who's indicted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court and is viewed as a pariah figure, around the world, including in half of Israel and in large parts of the global south. So that would be political suicide on that issue for a Saudi leader. But on the issue of, Iran, on the issue of opposing democratization in the Middle East, on the issue of opposing any sort of popular movements that are seeking to transform the Middle East, on the issue of political Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood, Saudi Arabia and Israel have very similar readings of those challenges. In fact, behind the scenes, there is close coordination between Saudi Arabia and Israel. We have solid reports that Netanyahu and the Saudi Crown Prince have met on several occasions. But there are differences. There are differences over the question of, the Israel-Palestine conflict. Saudi Arabia has to maintain some sort of public face in front of its own population if it's going to normalize relations with Israel. So that's a sticking point. And now there's a new sort of reading of the challenge that Iran poses in the region. When Trump was in office for the first time as president, Saudi Arabia was very much in favor of the Israeli position that was calling for attacking Iran and bombing Iran. Saudi Arabia, I think, has learned that that would be a fool's errand. It would undermine their own development plans, and now they're in favor of diplomacy and support Donald Trump's attempt to reach a deal over Iran's nuclear program. So those are some of the similarities and differences.
Okay, we know that Donald Trump wanted Saudi Arabia's signature on the Abraham Accords. It didn't happen, but does Donald Trump is he still hoping to forge some sort of a ceasefire in Gaza at least?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. And that's what's so tragic about what's happened today in Saudi Arabia from the perspective of human rights. Donald Trump on the 4th of February of this year at the White House with Benjamin Netanyahu standing beside him openly announced his plan for the future of Gaza, which was to remove the population of Gaza to neighboring countries and to build a, quote, Riviera in the Middle East in Gaza on the ruins of the hundreds of thousands of people who've been killed there since October the 7th, 2023. So my reading of what Donald Trump wants from Gaza is precisely what he stated, but I don't think he's going to do anything about it because he doesn't really care for the suffering of, the people of Gaza. I don't think he really even cares for Israel. He only cares for Israel to the extent that, pro-Israel donors in the United States are willing to back his campaign. It's fundamentally about his own prestige, his own image, and his own business interests. He's interested in securing a Saudi and Israeli normalization deal because he wants to claim some sort of political victory. He likes to claim that he's the author of that Abraham Accord initiative, when actually it was the Biden administration that sort of laid the groundwork for those emerging ties between Israel and various Arab dictatorships. He wants to win a Nobel Prize just so that it would stroke his ego. That's how I read Donald Trump, and I don't think there's any other way to read him except from that perspective. So that's why he's so interested, at least rhetorically, in the Abraham Accords. And today, in his speech in Saudi Arabia, he sort of praised the Abraham Accords. He wished for the day when Saudi Arabia would join the Abraham Accords. But critically, he said, Saudi Arabia will have to do it, quote, on their own time, which means he's not going to push Saudi Arabia to do this. He's perfectly happy with, striking bilateral business deals with the King of Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Sure, Professor. And I want to get your thoughts on Trump's lifting of Syria sanctions. I wonder if it came as a surprise to you. And from an economic perspective, what kind of lifeline does this actually offer to Syria? And how do you think it's being viewed by neighboring countries, especially Iran, a former ally?
I think that's the only positive thing that I heard today in Trump's speech. Syria is a broken society because of the rule of another family dictatorship, which thankfully was toppled in December, and it's unable to, start the process of rebuilding when it's under heavy sanction, primarily by the United States. So the announcement today is a positive development, but let's not sort of celebrate just yet. It's going to take many generations in the best of circumstances for Syria to get back on its feet, because it's a broken, devastated society. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. I think this statement is the lifting of sanctions is a good move. It's pretty clear, and Trump, indicated this in his speech today. It was because of the lobbying of the Saudi Crown Prince, and he mentioned the Turkish President Erdogan, that he has decided to lift sanctions. I think this is very much part of a coordinated plan with Saudi Arabia to bring Syria under the orbit of Saudi Arabia and move it away from Iran. Iran was one of the major external actors in Syria for a very long time, supporting the Assad regime, and so the Iranian regime won't be happy about this. But I don't think they're going to do much about it because they have their own, economic and political problems that they're facing, which are a function largely of their own internal corrupt rule and American sanctions that have been placed on Iran So that's how I view this statement about lifting sanctions on Syria today by the American president.
Okay, we'll have to end the conversation on that somewhat positive note. Professor, thank you very much. Nader Hashemi is Associate Professor of Middle East and Islamic Politics at Georgetown Uni.